and welcome back to Babbling by the Brook. I'm Mark Hoebee, producing artistic director here at Paper Mill Playhouse. You know, just this past season, I had the incredible honor of directing a wonderful production of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. And I'm so thrilled today that we will be joined by two of the stars of that show, the incredibly talented romantic duo of Prince Topher and Ella, Billy Harrigan Tighe, and Ashley Blanchet. Hi guys, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
It is so amazing to be in the virtual room with both of you again.
It's nice to be in your presence.
Thank you for joining us here on this little crazy series. First of all, where are you? Ashley, where are you?
I actually was in Vermont for 2 months. The day that everything shut down, my best friend was like, I guess my job's done, everything's done. I'm just gonna go home to Vermont. Do you wanna come? And I was like, yes. And he was like, okay, 2 hours. And I literally packed up everything. And I was like, I guess I could be gone for 6 months. I could be, who knows how long I'll be gone. And I cooked all my food and I put it into a suitcase and we left and we went to Vermont and I stayed there for it ended up being 2 months.
Wow.
But 2 weeks ago, I came back to New York City and it was like a whole nother culture shock all over again, because it was like having to adjust. And you know, I live in Times Square. So it was kind of like I was sort of bracing myself, like, okay, what is this going to be? I know it's the epicenter of everything, but it's definitely very quiet. I'll tell you that. Eerie. It's like, ooh, wah, wah, wah. You know? In a place where you're used to it being nonstop until 3 a.m. I think more so than other places, it feels like an emergency. Because when I was in Vermont, it was kind of like, oh, well, this could kind of be a normal day. We're all in our cars. We're isolated. But, you know, where everybody walks around and where there's tourists everywhere on a normal basis, it really does feel like an emergency scenario. Like it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, very different. And Billy, where are you?
I am in Ocean City, New Jersey.
I know Ocean City very well.
No way.
Yes. First, tell me why you're there.
Well, my wife's parents have a home here, and they're actually my mother-in-law went to high school here, and that's where they met. We got married here, so that has a very second home to us. But I was actually out in Aurora, Illinois, working on a show when everything happened. My wife just so happened to be visiting here when everything shut down. So our show closed and I drove out, and I've been here ever since. We've been back to the city twice to sort of check on the apartment, water the plants, that sort of thing. But we've, for the most part, been here.
So were you at the Paramount Theater in Aurora?
I was.
With my good friend, Jimmy Cordy?
Uh-huh, yeah.
And I know you're working on, Secret of My Success?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the middle of your run?
We had 3 weeks left. So we had thankfully been opened. We had been reviewed. A lot of the important people that were needed to see the show had been able to come out. So I think all things considered, we were in a good place to part ways if we had to.
Yeah, we were in rehearsal actually for our production of Sister Act that was supposed to be happening.
Wow.
And we only got to complete the first week, and then, you know, the whole city shut down. So yeah, and we're kind of on hold now. Where were you, Ashley, when it all happened? What were you doing? Were you just hanging out?
I was about to start rehearsals like the next day for The Bedwetter with Sarah Chapman and the late Adam Schlesinger, who wrote the music. It was like 2 days later, we're about to start rehearsals, and that got kind of that. But that actually, they're really gonna they're very strong about feeling like they need to bring that to the theater. So we have a date now in March to try to start rehearsals and really make sure that it gets out there.
Wow. I mean, everybody's sort of in this holding pattern, but and anxious to get back safely, right? But so many projects sort of frozen in time. I wanted to welcome you guys back for a little mini Cinderella reunion. It's only the 3 of us, but just to sort of revisit that project for a little bit and talk about it. And actually last week on this show, I interviewed Joanne Hunter and talked about our lives together. We've known each other for decades, but a large part of our conversation was about Cinderella and how special that project was. Um, and a lot of that was because of the two of you. Finding you, both of you, each of you, for those roles was so pivotal to me. And Joanne and I talked about the fact that reading the show, and it was that new version. It was a little odd for me because I grew up with the Leslie Ann Warren version, and so this one was new. And some of it didn't quite make sense to me until I got in the room with you, both of you and Joanne, and we figured it out together and made it really spectacular. So I don't know, what was it like? What was it like working with me on that show? No. But I'll start with you, Ashley. I mean,
Ashley's got to start that.
You'd been a princess before.
I had. I mean, definitely it was amazing to be able to go into the rehearsal room with you and have you be open to a show that had already, been produced on Broadway, and for you to say, okay, we're not just going to mount this, we're going to respect the material, but let's take a look at this and let's have the freedom to really talk about each of these scenes as if we had some creative thing to say. And that was so refreshing and wonderful to be in a room like that. I can't tell you enough how much it means from my side of the table to be able to say, okay, let's talk. Let's try to see how this would go and what your thoughts are. And I mean, so for me, it was a therapeutic experience.
Well, it's funny because I remember, and I said this last week, I talked to Joanne, that I was not as prepared as I felt I should have been going into that rehearsal process. And I said, and I told you, and I talked about that later, and I said, I'm going to just trust myself that I know enough, I have the skills to do it. But what was so great, I remember asking you, I can't remember what scene we were working on. And I said, I don't know what to do here. What do you think? And you had a little startled look on your face, like, oh
no.
Should I say what I think?
Oh no, this is a trap. Quick, escape, it's a trap.
But no, it was great to have that open dialogue. And I do feel like, for me, I never saw the revival. And so I kind of felt like we were working on a new show. It wasn't like there'd been multiple productions of this and everybody knows how it works and how it goes. We were sort of discovering new things together. And how did you feel about exploring? It's definitely a different take on this character.
Definitely. And I feel like there was a little bit of freedom walking into it, as knowing that you guys had made such a bold choice to say, let's have a person of color as Cinderella and let's not do the same, thing that's been done. And I feel like by making that choice, maybe we allowed for a little bit more of a sort of, we're going to take a fresh take on this anyway. We're going to have to re-examine, what we're saying, because it's a different person in this part that hasn't maybe been seen this way. So I feel like from jump, maybe there was sort of an opportunity to hopefully look at it with a modern take.
Yeah, and I think that was part of, the goal of bringing this new version to light, was to take a little more contemporary spin on it. And it's always interesting for me to work with Joanne. She's a woman of color too. We've known each other for decades and decades. But truly, I have to say, that was kind of, I guess you say, icing on the cake or cherry on top, because in the casting process, we were blindly looking at the right person for the role. And I told you this too. I said, you walked in, and just from the beginning, I was like, well, that's Cinderella. She has the S's. She has that's who it is. It was just what you brought into the room. So if there were other things too, that was great.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, because I think that's a really important thing as far as colorblind casting. I feel like casting has sort of gone in a way where it's been sort of like, we need to cast a Black person in this part. We need to fill a quota of people of color. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that actually kind of goes against, yes, I definitely want to represent for people of color, but I also mostly just want to be an actor first. And so it's really nice. It's really refreshing for someone to say, oh, we didn't think to ourselves, oh, we need to fill our quota. You were the best person for the part. I mean, that's the best thing I could ever want. And
Hands down 100%. That's exactly what it was. That was exactly what it was. And there was no kind of no discussion. We had a lot of talented ladies, but we were, I said, that's it. Ashley is Cinderella. So that's the way we're going.
Well, I hope that's the future of casting in general. You're definitely like the forerunner on that, and I definitely appreciate your casting in that way and thinking let's try to let's definitely embrace color, but let's go with. I appreciate that for sure.
Oh, you're a doll. And Billy too. I mean, this role is written not like your typical prince, and not like the traditional. I always think of a prince as a little stiff and a little dorky and a little, I don't want to say the straight man, the dour, just sort of straightforward. And that's not who this guy was at all.
No, not at all. I think that was what was so fun about doing it too, because I've had to play the opposite of that, to play the basically walking popsicle stick of a prince. And there's nothing of interest in that. And I think, I think what's so amazing about this process is going back to what you said before, is that you asked, and it's so rare that you walk into an opportunity or to a rehearsal room where the director really is honestly looking for your input and for your ideas and for just any creativity. Like you've always said, the best idea wins. And I that's such a refreshing way to work, because it allows the actors to feel like their thoughts and their impulses matter, and it allows them to use them and not use them in a way that's like, I'm going to try this and then hope I don't get yelled at, which is, I feel, happens quite a bit. And when you're reapproaching a show, especially a show like Cinderella that everybody already knows and everybody already sort of has an idea, and you say, we want to do a modern take, well, that requires a whole group of people to sort of open their eyes to it in a new way. And to do that, you have to be open and willing to accept whatever sort of comes out. And
Billy, you were so funny. You brought so much humor to the prince, which I so appreciated, that he was like this goofy, lovable guy, that he was like trying to grow up and trying to like find himself.
Yeah.
Your prince was so funny. It was great.
And
I'm glad you think so.
the audience thought so too. They did too.
Thanks.
Okay. But as going back to Ashley though, we talked about this in the rehearsal studio, that when we first read together too, there was just something about it that it clicked. And I obviously I think Mark, you and Michael and Joanne picked up on that too. But, it's just one of those things that, sometimes you catch lightning in a bottle. And I feel like this experience was really one of those things. It personally came for me at a time where I really needed something where I felt like my creative impulses were being freed. I feel like, and I'm sure Ashley can probably say the same, when you're working on a lot of these big shows and doing Broadway and tours and all that, a lot of times you're sort of forced into doing exactly the same thing that somebody else did before you. And while there's a lot of merit in trying to discover your own creativity in someone else's creation, when you're given the ability to be creative, it can be a bit overwhelming. So for me, this experience was really wonderful to sort of get those sea legs back again and feel, fortified in making those choices.
It's so funny because both of you in separate conversations have said that same thing to me about having an experience where you felt like you had been sort of, put into a mold. And then that this was sort of breaking that and opening it up and really allowing you to pour your talent in. And there definitely was, in each of you separately and together in the audition process, and I hate to use this word and I'll use it too much, this magical thing that happened, and there was a connection. And I think it matched this new script so well because each of those characters are trying to find their true selves, right? And looking within and exploring all the possibilities and not knowing what they were going to be. Ella had a road prescribed for her by the evil stepmother, the brilliant Tighe, who we love, right?
Yay.
She was spectacular. But that's not the way you wanted to go. You wanted to find your own way. And also the same thing with you, Billy Topher, Chris Sieber, amazing, right? Who is trying to keep you in your lane so that he keeps his life going. But both of you sort of breaking out of the parameters that have been set for you. And what a great way to do that as an actor and as a person. But one of the things I also remember is I couldn't believe, and I can't remember, it was in the first week, a couple of days in, that Billy, you had just had a baby.
Yeah. He was 3 weeks old at that point.
And you looked so good and so awake all the time. I was like, how are you doing this?
I didn't have the baby. Not that my wife didn't look beautiful and great and well rested as well, but yeah, it was also, I mean, talk about just divine intervention of, to be able to have a job during the Christmas season and to be able to work at home and to sort of know what was going to be happening in our lives around a very, very important moment was such a blessing to be able to sort of know we had the baby before we started rehearsals. We knew just based on math how that was going to work out. And then we didn't know how the show was going to go. That was the only dicey part. But we knew we were going to be living at home, and we knew we were going to be doing a great show and working at the Paper Mill Playhouse. So, I mean,
the one and only.
The one and only. So was unreal. And it's still, I mean, it's gotten easier in a lot of ways and a lot harder in a lot of ways. But I will never forget this experience because it's tied up with the birth of my son.
Wow. I didn't even think about that. All I kept thinking was how bright and fresh you looked every morning walking in.
I thought it was kind of weird, honestly. I was like, sure you have a baby, a newborn baby, because you didn't show, there wasn't a single symptom. Like there wasn't a single moment where I was like, oh, well, he's frustrated because he has a newborn. Didn't happen once.
Well, I think what's crazy, because now I've done this, Secret of My Success was the second show I'd done since his birth, is my life as an actor before and my life as an actor after feel like two very different things. And I can say that the way I've approached my work and the way that I approach this as a job and as a career and as a profession, I feel like my work in the rehearsal studio and in the theater is free in a way that it's never been before. I thought having a baby was going to make me more apprehensive about got to get the job, got to get those health weeks, got to do all those things to ensure that you're supplying for your family. And that's very real. But in a lot of ways, it allowed me to compartmentalize my life and being able to focus on when I'm in the rehearsal studio, I can 110% be there, because at 6 o'clock when we're done, I go home and I put that behind me. And I was always someone who would go home and like drill lines and work and work myself sick. And I think I was getting diminishing returns. And starting with Cinderella, I would take that hat off and put it back on when I started the next morning. And I found myself freer in that time window. So I'm curious to see how it goes going forward. But so far, I found my life and my work to be so much freer and less stressful than it used to be, even though something is much more stressful going on in the background.
So interesting, because you took the pressure off yourself. And we all know what that's like as performers, and even as director, choreographer, whatever. I feel more pressure outside the studio than I do in. When I'm in the studio, I feel like, okay, we're in that environment, we're working together, we're figuring it out. Leading up to it, I'm a mess at home, the weeks leading up. And even sometimes at night thinking, what do I have to get ready? What do I need for tomorrow? But that's another thing, Ashley. I never saw him ever like struggle for lines or any of that either. How did he do it?
I don't know. But I think it is interesting what you're saying about like trust and taking the pressure off, because I feel like that's such a thing that you say and that you've learned. And I feel like that's kind of the same lesson, is like, maybe we're stressing ourselves out. Maybe if we trusted ourselves a little bit more, we would get more out of it. We'd enjoy it a little bit more and feel freer.
You're exactly right. And Joanna and I were talking about this too. And she and I have such trust in each other that I said, even standing in front of the room that first day, not knowing where we were going, because I felt like I hadn't done my prep work, I trusted that I knew we were going to get there because I knew Joanne and I knew we would get through it. And so same thing with the two of you and with that company, right? That there was definitely a feeling of trust, and you can fall, but someone will be there to catch you. And you really can't make a mistake with, I mean, you know, Rose and Angel, your sisters in the room, and Dee and Chris and everybody, that you could kind of do anything and it was going to be okay, you know. And not having that pressure, one, I think makes the results better, right? Because you're free to
Create something, yeah.
yeah, you're free to find things. And what Billy was keying into too is actually when you take the pressure off yourself, you just do better. If we could only carry that through life all the time, but
Yeah.
stuff comes up, you know.
Yeah, it's like suddenly having something what felt more important at home made my job, which I think was very important, remind me that it's fun. And I think somewhere along the way, you get so swept up in the idea of like, I have to do this and this and this, and it's important and it has to be important and it is important, that it becomes stressful. And it's stressful already. You don't need to add to it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a play.
It's a play. You should play, you know?
Right. It should be fun. Even when it's serious, it should be fun.
It's fun when you're directing, Mark.
Oh,
And that's the truth of it. Like, we wouldn't have been able to do what we have, all of this we've been talking about, had it not been with you leading the room with like an air of fun and openness.
oh, you're kind.
And a sense of it being a full team. I feel like that's really important too, especially as a person who comes from doing a lot of ensemble work and feeling like, oh, I'm supporting the leads, I'm doing everything I can to make everybody look good and to follow what the director's saying, and yet I don't feel like the director knows me, knows my name, or like cares anything about me, or that I'm not a real part of this team. And I feel like I remember from day one, seeing you in the rehearsal room making jokes with people in the ensemble, knowing their names and making it feel like, okay, this is a full like team effort. And I feel like that too lends itself to just a warmer, happier room where everybody feels comfortable and not scared. But that everybody's important, you know, that each person who's slaving away to make this come off is just as important as any other person. I think that comes down to you leading it that way, and made such a huge difference.
You're kind to say that. And I think Joanne and I, we both came up through the ranks, right? We started out as dancers, which in the world of musical theater is kind of the lowest part of the totem pole, right? And I was even a swing a lot of the time off stage, you know, and
Yeah.
right. And I know what that's like. You work like crazy and you feel like sometimes people don't even know you're there. And so I try to work very hard, and Joanne does too, to make sure that everybody feels a part of the process. And that's selfish in some ways. It's my real feeling, but also I want the show to be the best it can be, right? We all do. And you want every single person contributing. And then it goes back to what Billy said, which is I always admit I don't know all the answers. And when there's a problem, the best idea in the room wins. And I don't care whose idea it is, right? Whoever comes up with the best idea wins.
That's so rare.
Yeah, well,
it's beautiful, and creates a beautiful experience. And I felt like I was hoping that the audience could feel that, you know, that we were all feeling that, and we had something actually that we wanted to present that we were proud of and that we felt good about. And when we came to work each day, we felt good. And I think that really makes all the difference.
I think it does translate. I mean, you know, people use this term all the time about the show family, right? But that was an incredible group of people working together. You know, Donna English, all of them, Andrew.
Yeah, you're right. It was a lot of good people.
It was, and loving what we were doing and delivering a great product to the audience. And they all saw it. They could tell. I think the audience feels when there's, you know, love and camaraderie on stage. They certainly feel when a show is stale and, you know,
oh yeah,
people are just checking in and clocking in and they're done, you know. So to have that opposite experience, there's an electricity, right? I mean, you know when the audience is into what you're doing, right? I mean, whether it's Cinderella or any other show, you can tell, right? Have you had that experience where the room is like alive?
Well, of course. I mean, it takes the both of us. It's not just, us standing. That's why theater is so amazing, because it's a live experience, and each audience feels completely different. And hopefully, if we're doing it right, we have something that we feel good about, that we're trying to sort of offer as a gift, as like, something that we hope will be meaningful to the people to come and experience live in person. So I think that's the hope, is that we actually have something that we are excited to give.
Yeah. And Billy, for you in this role too, we can talk about some other stuff, but one of my dreams was to play a comedic role, which I never did ever. But that idea of doing something and the audience reacts and they laugh and you can hear them, like that physical reaction from them, that must just be such a great feeling that you make that happen every night.
I feel like for an actor, it's a dangerous feeling, because like anything else, you can very quickly overindulge. But
Yeah.
but it is really nice. I feel like so much of what I've done has not been comedic, so to be able to sort of flex those muscles and reconnect with that is really enjoyable, and to find ways to keep that fresh and to not feel like they're laughing at this particular thing that I'm doing, that it's more of it's less tangible than that. It's something that you're building from the very beginning of the show to the end of the show. And if you're not serving the character from the beginning to the end, then those laughs aren't going to happen, because all you're worrying about is trying to get that laugh. And the minute you're worried about trying to make them laugh is when they're just going to stare at you, and nothing feels worse than when they don't laugh.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. And I think, one of the great things about this show too is there were a lot of surprises in it, and there were surprises even for me. Some of the magic, the costumes, the William Ivy Long, those transformations, Donna from crazy old Marie into the beautiful fairy godmother, and Ella's transformation into the ball, which was, a crazy thing that we worked on quite a bit, but it was great.
Yeah,
the dress transformation.
most of the time.
Most of the time it worked perfectly.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. But also you both surprised me, and there were, a couple of moments, one specifically that I remember that didn't make it into the show, that I didn't know was coming. It was in the chase. Do you remember the chase at the top of Act 2?
Mm-hmm. The backflip that Billy did?
Yeah, or a side flip.
Oh my God.
That was amazing. I had no idea you had that kind of talent. Just for anybody who's listening, he ran on stage and did this side flip, a gymnastic move that out of nowhere, and thrilling. I mean, I know we were tight on the edge of the stage and it wasn't really a safe thing to keep in every night, but
yeah, you were wise to tell me to back that off, Mark.
Well, I don't know if
Joanne, I think, would have had me do 4 more if it was up to her, and I would have done it gladly. Probably would have hurt myself, but no, I think it's something that somehow always manages into finding the choreographer's ear. Every show, and the one I just did in Aurora, I did tumbling in the show.
Yeah.
Do you tell them? Are you like, by the way?
No, I stopped telling people in my mid-20s. It's like, it's because I could still do it, but the list of as Mark knows, the list gets shorter and shorter as you get older.
Yeah.
Yes. So the list is quite short now, but it's a strong list, and I enjoy doing it, but it's also a lot of work. So I think it was fun to do in the rehearsal studio, and it was allowed me to sort of tap into some things with the character that I think made its way into the show in other ways.
Right.
But I think ultimately I'm glad I didn't have to do it, especially during those, holiday weeks where we're doing a bunch of shows and everybody's tired, or we're carrying around a little extra weight from the holiday meals. I think I already busted the pair of pants a couple times. I would have busted them all the time had I been doing that.
And it's different to do it a few times than to do it 8 times a week,
Yes.
week after week.
That is very true. That is very true.
While you have a newborn. It's different to do it when you're 21, but when you're taking care of a newborn at night, I feel like it's
Yeah.
a thing too.
So the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is you both had quite a varied career, and Ashley, you were in Frozen and Beautiful, and toured, and Billy, you too, you Book of Mormon, and some really great productions. Is there like a role that you dream of playing, a dream role for either of you? As I'm planning future seasons and thinking of shows. No, but I mean, like, what's on your bucket list?
Really?
Yeah.
I think for me it will be creating something from scratch. I think that's
my
really,
answer.
but it's the best answer. I think, as you know, going back to everything we've been talking about, while it's great to do these big roles and these big shows and bring your ideas to them, ultimately they've been done. And I try not to like allow your ego to get in there and think I'm going to do it better than this person I idolize. You just try to do it different, or you try to make your own take on it. But there's nothing scarier than knowing that something is being created and you've got your hands on it, because suddenly it really brings everything into focus of what do I have to say? There's no one to copy. There's no original recording to listen to and steal inflections from. It's all you. And I think that as an actor, I'm most attracted to doing things that scare me and stretch me in new ways, because that's ultimately the best way to grow. And what better way to grow than to expose yourself by doing something completely new that's really showing what you got.
Right. That's an excellent answer. Ashley, same, right?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, somebody recently asked me if I would consider working on Christine in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. And I thought, okay, that would be really fun to be that character, because she's so like doughy-eyed and like, here I am, and she's got beautiful music. But then she's the twist at the end where she's actually the one there. So I think that would be really fun, and that recently came to me as a possibility of things to work on just over Zoom. So I was like, yeah, I would love to do that. That would be so much fun. But I think I'm in the same camp as Billy. I would love to work with certain people again. I would love to work with the two of you again, you know, and there are people in my mind that I'm like, oh man, I love the work they've created, and then I would love to do something with them. But yeah, hopefully it's something that I can contribute my full self to, like Billy was saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Billy put it very well. It's scary and exciting at the same time, something new, because there's no roadmap. And what I find in watching a bunch of shows that have been created here and then moved on is just like the process we were talking about, that when all the creatives are open-minded and listening, you cast the right people, right? You cast the people that you think are most appropriate for the role as written, but then the role morphs around you, right? I guess for whatever role you originate, Billy, they'll be tumbling. And maybe just one trick.
Yeah. Well, if I'm in control of creating something new, I'm definitely going to put a flip in. That's how they won't replace me. That's
you know, and it would be great to have those roles that you become your signature roles, whatever they are, created, birthed here at Paper Mill, and then transferred right to Broadway.
Amen.
Let's set that up. Anyway, I just want to thank you both for, first of all, for delivering to our audience and an incredible production of Cinderella, and for just being the best Topher and Elec ever could have imagined, and for joining me and Joanne and Michael Borth and the whole team and leading that company so beautifully. And it was just a great experience, I think, for all of us. And I do look forward to the time when we can be creating or reimagining something together. And you'd be welcome back here at any time.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love you both.
Love you
too.
And we'll talk very soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. And don't forget about our other online offerings. Each Thursday night at 7 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook, we're airing our Humanities Symposium series. And on Monday nights, also at 7 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube, we're airing our New Voices concerts. And don't miss next week. We're going to have Tony Award winner Ali Stroker. See you next time.